Your Excellencies.
Very excited to see everyone this evening.
Yes, it is.
So tonight's topic is the Lions of Ansteorra, and we have a number of folks who have said that they'll be joining us this evening to tell tales of their favorite lions or moments in Ansteorran history that were shaped and guided by a member of the Lions of Ansteorra. I have invited several past crowns. I don't know if they'll be able to attend to talk about the gravity of that decision, since only one lion can be made per reign. I've heard crowns express that it's a very serious decision. It's one that kind of encapsulates and reflects their whole reign, and so they take that very seriously. And so I'm hoping that they can speak to that directly. We'll see if they're able to make it. But I look forward to the stories that folks might be willing to share. Looks like His Grace was trying to connect, but we lost him.
I will be back in just a moment.
Okay. I think we have just a couple more minutes before folks are able to connect. Master Robin, how are you this fine and lovely evening?
Doing quite well, thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say.
Me too.
And we're looking forward to what you might have to say that you might be willing to share about your experience. Something I'm also hoping to get are stories of moments where a lion has entered court unbidden and what business that attended to, or just times that something special happened there. Master Ivar told us the story last week of how he entered a baronial court unbidden and grabbed two miscreants by the ear and escorted them out. Which is very
Eva Ansteorra was here?
Eva Runmagi.
Oh, right, excuse me. There are two Lion Eva, sorry.
Yes.
Eva Battlescald was the second lion ever made.
Yes. Yes. This was Ivar Runmagi, and he was telling the tale of going into Baron Kale's court and dealing with two fellows who were being very mischievous during court behind His Excellency. And so he told the tale of snatching them by the ear and bringing them along. Oh, and it looks like another lion has just asked me for the link. So bear with me one moment while I get that for her. Countess Megan is trying to connect. There we go. I sent out about 30 invitations to every lion that I had contact information for. However, I'm very bad with faces and names, so I'm not sure I've connected SCA names with mundane names where applicable, but certainly hoping we can have a good crowd this evening. Your Grace, Inman, it's so wonderful to have you here. We're so glad.
Glad to be here.
Oh, it's so wonderful to have you both here as well. Welcome.
Hi. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. However, your beloved Lord keeps disappearing into the background.
Bring him closer. Here, we're going to do that. Come on. How's that?
I developed this as a fighting technique many years ago, and it won't go away when I don't want to fight.
Actually, the story, ask Jan.
Yeah, I used it on him and Eisenfaust backing up a hill.
Excuse us. But this came in on top of dinner. I have been wildcrafting all day. In fact, both of us have been wildcrafting all day. And you may ask, what is there to wildcraft in January? A good amount. So we traveled quite a, well, actually not quite a ways, but a decent ways. Spent about 2 hours outside, got what we needed, came back, and then found your message. So forgive us for being late.
Not at all. We're still, we expect people to be coming and going the entire evening. That's how this usually goes.
It's always good to see you.
It's a pleasure to have you. We're so glad.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okie dokie.
He's going to try something besides black.
Okay. So as I was mentioning earlier, tonight's topic is the Lions of Ansteorra, the impact they've had on us as a kingdom, moments where they have entered Court Unbidden and done important business for the kingdom, or settled a miscreant, or advised a crown. We're hoping that maybe some crowns will be able to stop by, and actually we have 2 crowns here to speak to what goes into the decision of who to pick for a lion for your reign, since only one can be made per reign. I have heard that's a very weighty decision. But other people literally turned to each other the moment they won crown and said, "Oh, this is fantastic. We get to make so-and-so lion." So I'm very curious to hear any of those stories that people might be willing to share. Last week, Ivar spoke to a lion that was his personal hero, and helped to formulate how he saw the order, and so I would love to hear stories of any lions that helped to create that definition for those who are present, who are members of that order. So really my job is just to kind of facilitate. I would open the floor to anyone who would like to speak on any of those topics, and I am just very excited to hear the stories that you might be willing to share.
I have a collateral story that might inform.
Please.
And this is not lions specifically. It is when I was Princess of the Outlands, and the Walker of the Way was their award that it equates to the lion as much as can. And of course, that was a principality level award. And when I was called upon to make that decision in my reign, it was left up to me. And the person that I chose, it came down to 2 people. It came down to Baldwin of Erebor, who was my herald. Can you imagine that? And his mother.
Oh.
And his mother was the one who cooked, who never failed to be the woman of the Middle Ages. She was receiving, she was serving, but she was also very, very much in charge of the spiral of life that we all attended to. And it was the weightiest decision of my entire reign as princess. And I chose her, not because she was woman, but because she was the one who held it all together, even though Baldwin had served me so incredibly and never left the Middle Ages in his entire time that we were together. Neither did she. So as you can see, it was a horribly hard decision. And the reason I chose her was because of the infrastructure that she's provided as a hidden being, as women were hidden beings often in the Middle Ages. And I thought, this is really the ultimate gift of persona.
Wonderful.
So that was just an insight into something that happened for me as princess that, may or may not have informed anything similar to what has been done in Ansteorra, but it was a weighted decision for me and made on a bus, the Holy Grail school bus.
I think you mentioned that.
It was the 70s.
And it's on changing room and beer cave.
Yeah, it did indeed.
Okay.
I'm going to gallery view here so I can see everybody.
Okay.
So that's an experience, but it was very special.
Your Grace, Inman or Hrabia Jan, would you be willing to speak at all to that decision as to the lions that you chose during your reigns?
Well, I'll probably sound a little mundane about it, but the order was still pretty new when I was crowned.
Mhm.
And it was still a bit ill-defined as exactly, was it a persona award? Was it a service to the kingdom? Was it, there were people who wanted to nail it down legalistically in writing. And I found that especially as they, announced in court as defender of the dream, it gave a certain mystique to it. And we were looking at, we'd like the order to develop not into a political entity, but something that would touch on the soul of the kingdom. We didn't define that, you've got to have we didn't want to have lion circles and voting on things. We wanted that purely grace from the crown. And we were looking because Kemrith and I were both good friends with the first two lions. Orm is probably my best friend in the SCA, and Ivar of the Volga, then later on Battle Scald. And one of the things we looked at, I don't want it to get too much of a regional flavor. It needs to be a kingdom award. And Kemrith and I had a lot of discussions about it, and we kind of kept it between ourselves. We didn't get too much feedback from other places. Willow, whose idea the order was, readily volunteered advice. But I didn't want it to also have a masculine flavor per se, even though the idea of the lion, sounds sort of yang as opposed to yin. So Kemrith and I, thought about several worthy people, but even though it was yet another person from the northern part of the kingdom, we went with Megan. She had been out of the kingdom to be Princess of the Outlands, but returned soon thereafter. And just the nature of how she played the game and the sort, she didn't really so much give political leadership as just leadership. Leadership touching on ideals. And, people talk about the dream. And usually I hear it as people being nasty and wanting to get somebody as a traitor to the dream or some such silliness. But everybody defines it for themselves. A lot of what the dream is if you look at a good, full definition of chivalry, not just as it was practiced politically, but as chivalry inspired and helped civilize very crude age in history. I saw that as part of what the order ought to
Fighting with the back.
represent. And we
I'm good.
did things like this, worked on the Tournament of the Lions for
I'm in.
quite a while. We could get every member of the order together and talk about it each year, but the order grew and that became cumbersome, and again, we never, didn't want a political bloc, but we wanted leadership and everybody could do it their own way. And I think we made a good choice with Megan. We've all got our quirks. I think you can't be a lion without being quirky in one way or another. But from the early group we had added to the dignity of the order. It wasn't just the rarity per se, it was the lack of playing politics with it. The Order of the Lions tended to step aside from politics and just tried to make the game we all play better. And I've done a typical Jan ramble, and I could go on, and I will back off here unless there's something specific to talk about.
Well,
Say it. Well said. Yeah, the lion, as far as I know, has never really had a hard and fast definition. I always kind of took it to mean if I had to choose a person to represent what Ansteorra is to the rest of the known world, if I chose that person, could he or she do that? And that was part of my criteria. Someone who, just by the way they carried themselves, by the ease in which they made friends, how much they were willing to teach what they knew, and were easy to be around. Someone who, just by being here, made it more fun to be here too. And then there's sometimes when people had to put it all on the line for this kingdom. Because if we lost that fight, then there would be no dream left. So, it's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make as a crown, because when there's only one maid per reign, that becomes one of the most important people in the kingdom. I mean, probably not in their mind, but in the whole scheme of things, to be chosen out of all of the Ansteorrans to choose from is an honor that is just impossible to describe. So that's what I took into consideration.
would you be willing to name those that you made lions for those who may not know?
Well, I made Willow, Duchess Willow, and I made Leon Dunn. I made Duke Seamus of the Cats. I'm going to forget some, I swear I am. And Sir Frederick von Sternwald, who stood right beside me during the fight with the board in '94. I know I got a couple more in there, but I'm not having any.
Finn and Lloyd.
Huh?
Finn and Lloyd.
Finn and Lloyd. Thank you, sir. See there?
Am I the only herald here? I've got the list up.
Yes.
What are you, a herald?
Oh, you're the only one with a functional memory.
Good to see you, Robert.
No, I have the list up right now.
Well, that's a very heraldic thing to do, is to have the lists in front of you.
Right.
There you go.
And it all's
Good
on
for
the
you.
line, you gotta know.
One of the crucial things about the lion is that there isn't a definition for it. I mean, yes, there's a definition. The Constitution says the one who best fits within the milieu of the society. That doesn't say anything. That's its strength. It's the vision of the granting crown. There is no common idea about what a lion is. I mean, every award given is a reflection of the vision of the granting crown, but the lion is the focused vision of the crown because it's the only one they can give. Lloyd, who is our second and sixth king and who is a lion, said the lion should be different. Each crown shows what they value about Ansteorra by their choice of lion. The crowns are not all in agreement. So the lions are not all the same. Nobody who would choose Megan would choose me. Nobody who would choose me would choose Megan. That's a good thing. That's stronger than any single person's vision.
Amen.
What makes the lion is that there is only one the crown can do. No crown can spoil the order by throwing in a half dozen of his friends. I mean, yeah, admittedly, Inman did. He threw in 6 people, but it took a lot of work to do that. No single
Amen.
period can throw in a half dozen friends, which means when you have one to do in this reign, you have to take it seriously and you wind up showing what you believe in. And what you believe in is not what the next crown believes in. And so there are always lions that you're going to say, why is that person a lion? And the answer is that crown values things differently than you do. This is a good thing. This makes the lion everything that 60 different crowns are valued.
So,
So it's like a well-woven fabric with very, very different yarn in every part of it that lends to its strength.
so last week, Master Ivar said something that really struck me. He said that being a lion was the greatest weight of any award that he had, more so than being a baron of the Court of Ansteorra, more so than being a peer of the society. That when he goes to an event, he thinks about what is he wearing and what is he doing and how is he behaving, because the weight of being a lion is so much more important to him because he knows that every eye is on him, that he has been named someone at that level that is both a burden and a blessing. And I hope I'm paraphrasing him correctly, because it is so much rarer and personal and important to him. Would any of you be willing to speak to that?
Oh, he's absolutely right.
I agree.
I think he's absolutely right. And I think the people, but I think he's probably not giving himself enough credit, because I think he does that anyway.
Of course he does. But that's not his point.
Well,
his point is this, and let me rephrase it, because he expressed pretty much what I'm feeling when I go to an event these days. When I was named a lion, I was 35. I had a lot more strength than I have now, a lot more stamina. I was doing more things. I was going to more events. Now they say, okay, you were chosen because of what you do. Just keep doing what you do. I'm 66 now, 65. I can't keep doing what I do. So when I go to an event, one of the things I think about is, have I made the dream more real for somebody? This is going to sound like a weird place to get inspiration from, but when they train people to work at Disneyworld, you're not on duty or off duty. You're on stage or off stage. I'm a lion, what this means is if I'm where people can see me, there may be somebody right now thinking, okay, what he's doing now is what Ansteorra is supposed to be at its best. Don't scratch yourself. Try to find a way to say something or do something that will make it bigger, grander, more honorable, more impressive, more fun, something for people who see you. I wouldn't be a lion if Michael and Rebecca hadn't thought I was all doing that. But there's lots of things I was doing 30 years ago I'm not doing today. But when I am a lion, when I'm at an event, I have the ability, if I think about it, if I focus on it, to make it greater for somebody. Now, that may be coming up with a grandiose way to toast the queen. It may be saying something nice to my opponent loudly so that people can see it right before he one-shots me. It might be going up to someone who just lost a tourney and saying something that will make him want to enter the next one. But it's a responsibility, and I hope I never forget that. But yeah, and it's a tool. It's a great tool. I've spoken about the negative, the scary part. It is the ability to stand up in court when nobody else wanted me to say something worth saying. But that carries the responsibility that when I do it, I should say something worth saying. I once stood up in court, walked up, interrupted court to tell people, those pillows in front of the crown, stop avoiding them. Yes, there's beautiful embroidery on them, but the only reason they're there is for you to kneel on them because the crown doesn't want you kneeling on hard dirt. Kneel on the flipping pillows.
Yes, I remember that. Very good. Does that give you some idea about the weight of the lion?
It does. Can any of you, other than Master Robbins, perfect example, speak to a time in which you entered Court Unbidden and what you had to say at that moment?
Oh,
I think the very first time I entered the Court Unbidden, I came and claimed a princess of the court to be my bride.
Oh,
And,
wonderful!
it was purely self-serving, but I tried to do it in such a way that had some kind of precedent. I brought my kinsmen and warriors of renown that I knew, and I pretty much was hoping that the then crown would put up these shenanigans, because this is like the first trial of this type of thing, and I didn't want it to be flippant and set that precedent. I wanted it to have some kind of repeatable or usable message, and that was, look, there's things that can only be done in court, and if you have to go through all of the layers, like the heralds and the seneschal, et cetera, the spontaneity of it is pretty much shot. And as Don Romney will testify, spontaneity is one of the stock and trade type of things that the lion has to be able to use. It's tantamount to some type of cold water in the face sometimes to get that point across. And like he also said, it needs to be something it's a responsibility not to bring up trivialities. But I saw this opportunity shaping up maybe a month before, and it was many-fold. I had a legitimate claim through Jonathan. I had gone and done a service that he approached me with. He approached me with a task, and this task was couched and presented to me in persona. And he didn't act like a politician. He acted like a king, and he had a just grievance with one of his subjects. He was king of Outlands at the time, and he says, "I need for someone to go, and you're going in that direction. I appoint you this task. Bring to me what I need, and then we'll see what falls out." But
he also requested that you bring him an army to fight on his side, and you did that too.
Yeah, see, there were several conditions, but so I said that in lieu of, in consideration of that, I would like to acquire the hand of a princess of the court. I'm working my way up the ladder, and this was all done in persona. The speech was that way, the understanding was that way, and the precedent that both of us shared, historical precedent through literature, said that that's the way it's done. Okay, so that started that ball rolling. I pledged a ring. It was an heirloom of my family. I got it from a dear friend of mine. First real contact I ever made in the SCA outside of Tanasan and Cameron. And he took that as a pledge. When it came down to me coming into court, I called upon him. He's my witness. He's the one that made that pledge, and I pledged back to him. That's fealty. And that's what I'm getting across. We made a contract. I served the kingdom through the king. And so if you want to call it theater, yes, I use theater. I used a marriage as theater. I was going to get married anyway. But it set precedents and in how the lion interacts with the court. It's respectful, but it demands respect in return. If you saw fit to make us have this authority and this privilege, then we expect you to pay attention to us when we find it was necessary for us to use it. The other thing was, we had a king who was willing to let that possibility exist. Lloyd was the king at the time. The crown prince was Jan. They were both sitting in court when I arrived with a mob and demanded that I be heard. And they allowed that. It broke a lot of heraldic principles that had been adopted at the time, but they allowed that. And one of the things that happened was Lloyd, being a shrewd bargainer, says, "Okay, well, we've settled the bride price and we've settled the fact that this is the one you picked. What's in it for me?" And I, you snap your fingers, and Ivar steps forward with something under a cloak, and he whips it out. The sun breaks through the clouds and shines on the hilt of the sword of state.
That literally happened.
And
The
so
sun broke through the crowds and shined on that.
it was, I had good lighting manager at the time. So, but the deal is that
Taking advantage of the moment.
it was a public spectacle of interacting with the crown, the court, and subjects that have a reason to do so. Okay, and I think that I've seen examples of that happen since then, and I think people are thinking in terms of trying to get the most mileage out of coming before the court without being a slapstick comedy act.
I want to say something to that too. Something that I think has happened in recent years, actually the past 20 years, more than in fact, the past 15 or so, is that there have been moments of theater without having epic continuity. What I mean by epic continuity, for example, there is story. Now, I'm going to tell you right off, I'm trained by a person in story, by a person who was a classmate and contemporary of Joseph Campbell. So I kind of have an edge, okay? But it kind of raises the bar for me of what I want to speak to, what I want to perform to, what I want to rise to in the SCA. And epic continuity is something, for example, with Orm, the playing out of from giving Jonathan the ring, pledging to go go guard the princess who had gone as afar to another principality to serve, and bring back troops to fight in a battle and bring back this artifact. Okay, that took 2.5 years. So it's not like this. I did this thing once in front of the court, and that kind of simplistic stuff has kind of diminished some things. It's the ability to see a long story that I think made the early Lions especially have an impact on the kingdom, in my opinion, because they were able to have the patience to play it out over time and over time and over time. And that resulted in a lot of things that impacted the culture of the kingdom. So that included the sort of state that didn't happen overnight. You know, before that, we had a toilet bowl thing for a scepter. And it came to my head that we just had to have something better. And that happened while I was princess of another principality. We were all principalities then, of the kingdom of Ottenveld. And I thought, what can we do that would elevate Ansteorra as we come home? And I kind of kept my eye open, and there was this thing arose, and we did that thing. But the point is, there was a long vision involved there that in trained other people to play in that vision their own part totally spontaneously. So you had this whole group of people doing this thing together. And it was very, very impactful. And if I may just do one more side to that, as an example, once upon a time, there was no longship company. There were no longships. Those people had not even come into Ansteorra yet. There was a ship that Queen Willow had given to Freya and Ivar, who is the second Lion of Ansteorra. And they recruited members to go out and sail up on this ship. Later on, as we came home, one of those members became Orm. Later on, I was found worthy to sail up on that ship and asked to join, and it took me a long time to decide to do that. And I set down terms, okay? So you have this play going on, this persona interaction that has nothing to do with the court. And people are watching this and saying, what's going on? These people are talking about all this stuff between them. And they're talking about the ship. And they're talking about all these people on the ship. Guess what? Some of those people and the ship itself never existed in physical reality, and most of the kingdom believed that it did. Not because we convinced them to saying this is real, but because of the way that we interacted between each other. You know, I'd go to Orm and say, okay, Norgay's overboard again. What shall we do? And he'd come back with something, and somebody else from the ship would hear that and come play with it. And it was this vast interaction of spontaneous play that people were watching from the side and saying, oh, they've got this great ship and it's sailing all around Ansteorra. Well, Ansteorra doesn't have that much water, but it was a thing. And it had all this mystique, and it inspired, and I have been told by several people that it inspired what became the Longship Company. Ragnar was one of those. He said, I'm going to do this myself.
But this time we're going to have a real ship.
Yeah, but this time we're going to have a real ship. But it was the intensity of the interaction between people that also was part of what informed the early Lions, I think.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I hope I didn't go too far astray on that.
You didn't. Inman, did you have any tales of times that you utilized that authority to enter court unbidden?
Oh, I've been in court many times, coming in unbidden to take the sword of state. I also have gone in and challenged the crown when I gave it back. My challenge was always the peers of the realm and the nobility have rights that are written down in law, but that the people of Ansteorra don't. So will you be their advocate?
Yeah.
Will you stand up for the people of Ansteorra? If you will, I will hand you the sword willingly. If you will not, I will not. And of course, I always handed the sword. But to me, that's always been a meaningful part of being a lion, is that to defend the realm, you must defend everyone in it. And just a simple challenge during a coronation pretty much makes that clear. That's about all I ever did. I just kept doing what I was doing.
So
Yes.
Catalina had a question. Are there any other kingdoms with something similar to our lions? And I can answer that yes, there are. Ottenvelt has the lions. Ansteorra has a lion very similar. The Outlands has the Walker of the Way. A number of other kingdoms have a similar order, but not all of them have the right to enter a court unbidden. And we've had some interesting stories last week of times that Ansteorran lions entered the court of another kingdom unbidden because they hold that right wherever they are. And Master Ivar was saying that he had a member of such an order in another kingdom kind of nudge him and go, hey, we don't get to do that. How come you guys get to do that? He's like, because we're Ansteorra and we're cool.
Yes, that's kind of like along the lines of we're also, as Ansteorrans, allowed to enter court armed. And there are many kingdoms where if you show up to the site where the king is armed, people break a sweat. But these particular rights are kind of indicative of the outlook and attitude of Ansteorrans, that they would codify it in the first place. That is to make sure that people were allowed to behave like they normally kind of behave responsibly, as opposed to with a boot on their neck. But I take your point. Have seen it before where people are upset that lions behave as if it's not that they're above the crown, it's that they are not bound by the whim of the crown so much as they are bound by the honor of the kingdom and the symbol of the leadership of that kingdom, the crown. It's not a cult of personality. Right. It's not a cult of personality. We hold the kingdom and the person who is leading at that time
in highest esteem.
In esteem because of who they are and what they stand for, not because of their personality.
Which actually, in all fairness, has pissed off some crowns.
Yeah, well.
What can you say?
The world's made of a lot of different people.
I have a question, Chris. Is that Inman?
Yes.
Whatever happened about supporting people doing the SCA to the best of their ability, in person or in persona? What do you mean by that?
Chris is not Inman.
Okay.
Chris is in the audience.
What does this person mean by that, and how can we answer that?
Chris, you're not muted. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes. What I meant by my question is what I'm seeing less support of new people coming in. You know, back in the day, if you showed up with a pair of blue jeans and a tea tunic, people supported you. You know, with oh, here's your first bowl. You know, here's
Yes.
your first spoon.
Yes.
Oh, you don't have a place, a tent? Well, guess what? I have a small lean-to you can borrow.
Mhm.
You know, now these days people, oh, you gotta join our household to do this, you know, and then they try to divide people before they even actually step their foot into, into the water, instead of just like, hey, welcome to our group. This is what we're about. And basically make up your own mind. We're trying not to influence you. And yet,
First of all,
Chris, could I ask how long you've been playing in the SCA?
50 years. Well, over 50 years.
Okay,
I'm not identifying who I really am. Sorry.
that's fine. I'm certainly not asking you to do so.
Oh no.
Are you asking that in the context of the Lions in specific, or are you just tossing that out as a general question off topic?
Well, I'm asking the Lions because the Lions are held to a higher standard, on keeping the dream alive and seeing that the dream is, supported. And I've seen it very rarely that a Lion will step forth when he sees something that actually needs to be done. Just like a simple breaking down camps. There's lots of us who stay in the background, and we come there just to help set up and to help take down. We actually had a Lion 2 years ago look at all the squires and a few knights and he told them, get off your ass and help break down the camp. And so
I didn't even know that this was happening because it's just not in my way of doing things. So it doesn't happen from me or for me. So I didn't even know that this was happening. It's kind of a shame.
I think you're overstating how wonderful it was in the past and overstating the problems of today. The first newsletter I received when I first became a member had a letter from somebody who was leaving the SCA forever. It was the Baroness of Bjornsburg. She was leaving the SCA forever because the dream was dead. People weren't helping each other, and we'd given away what we used to have. That was in the 70s. There has never been a time since I've been in the SCA that there weren't some people saying, hey, what happened? We lost what we had before. Chivalry is dying. Well, yeah, you're right. Chivalry is dying. Chivalry is dying today. Chivalry was dying in the 70s. In the Renaissance, they were looking back to the days of the Middle Ages that had the honor and glory. The Middle Ages were looking to the lost glories of Rome. Rome was looking back to what Greece was like. Greece was looking into the golden age, looking back to the golden age. Yes, chivalry is dying. Chivalry is always dying. Chivalry is always that close to dying, and it needs help right now from you, from me. The glory of the SCA isn't that we've always done the right thing. The glory of the SCA is that after we screw up, we say, oh shit, we screwed up. And we turn around and help someone. So, what happened to it? What happened to it is this. We need right now today, to not believe something ugly we heard about someone today. We need to help someone feel better who is upset about something right now at our next event, and who knows when that will be. We need to carry someone's ice chest. We need to break down someone's tent. We need to help each other. And we need to recognize that the person who's not helping someone right now may be the person who needs help. And hurry, chivalry is dying.
Well said. Thank you very much, Master. Very well said.
If I could come in and go back a little bit, you were talking about giving and taking the Sword of State.
Yes, please.
And due to the Sword of State originally coming from Orm and the way he was describing, it has given Ansteorra a nice little bit of drama at King stepping down.
Mm-hmm.
When the lions come in and take the Sword of State. You know, it is not the moment that says the reign is over with or, you know, a big, you know, overly dramatic thing, but it sets a tone that things are ending. And Chuck, you know, talked about, you know, the ways that it's brought back and given to the new king once the crown is there. And I just remembered once, and I don't remember if it was the coronation of Hector or maybe Simon, but it was near the Stargate. And the order was still fairly small. And there was never a heraldic precedence to who does what. Just Ivar, Battle Scald, brought the Sword of State. And he was being Ivar the Viking. And he just boldly strode into court and walked up to the person who'd just been crowned and held up the sword and said, "Many good men before you have held this. Don't disgrace them." And he almost threw it at the king.
Oh my.
He turned around and thought to himself, boy, that was kind of harsh, but I might as well bluff it out. And, you know, went on out. He went back and talked to the king later, but it was a good dramatic moment, is one I remember.
Yeah, well, that's what we were about. That's why, you know, that thing we do is important. And I remember that very well. I remember the king wasn't even slightly upset. He just didn't know what to make of it at the time. But he said, well, we should have told me, I'd have helped you, you know. I haven't played in quite a number of years. But I totally agree with Robin. There's always something that doesn't please everybody. There's always some way that the knights or the pelicans or the laurels ought to act better, or the king and queen need to pay more attention. And the only thing wrong with the SCA is that there's people in it. If the concept could stand alone, it would be fucking magnificent. But that's not how it works.
Kind of made of human beings.
Yeah.
But
and when there are human beings, all this is going to happen over and over again.
I wasn't aware that, you know, there was a sense of the newcomers not being supported, and that kind of does make me sad but that goes across the spectrum and not just to the Lions. I too have had experiences in the past 20 years. One of them, I was really ill, had come in anyway. It was not a contagious illness, but it was joint issues because I had an injury. And I needed to hit the restroom, and I could not beg, borrow, or steal a gentleman to escort me. And the next time I went to an SCA event in another locale in Ansteorra, I couldn't, you know, I had a total escort. I had like an entourage. So it's spotty. It's spotty.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it depends on the event. I think it depends on who you run into first. I think there's no place to put blame here. You can't say that it's become a kingdom-wide problem when it could be a problem with a household or a family or somebody that had a bad day at work before they drove to the event Friday.
Yeah.
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 You know, you can't, you can't judge by the group is what I'm saying. There's no blanket accusation that fits that this kingdom has turned into this or turned into that. I've seen some things that don't please me, but then I don't play. So I have absolutely no way to work at change. I basically come to these chats because I'm kind of historical, but
And I'm very,
that's
very graceful that you do.
that's
Yeah.
I don't think the SCA is any better or any worse. I think it's very different. I remember, hell, at the coronation, Sven Randallson's coronation, I was there to give him his challenge. And somebody came up and handed them a check for $2,500 for some fundraiser or something that they'd done. And I was sitting next to Mahadi and we looked at each other and I said, Mahadi, do you remember when $2,500 was more money than we had in the entire kingdom treasury? We didn't get a stipend to buy gas and stuff when we were on the throne. It came out of our own pockets.
Yeah. I thought
You know?
that's the way it's still with that.
I mean, it's just different, somebody, I read a thing that I think hit it. When you saw somebody on the field in a Freon can helmet with carpet armor,
Mhm.
and you saw a knight in shining armor when you saw this individual, because that was where you were. That's what you wanted to see. And now somebody's got a $20,000 suit of armor on, and somebody's bitching because they have on modern shoes.
Well,
So,
it does
yes,
disrupt the
it's very
continuity.
different. It's very
But
different.
also, there was that person in the tin can armor that behaved more medieval than some people do now, and I'm going to stand by that. And
You're
some
right,
people,
exactly right.
and it's not that we saw that person because it's what we wanted to see. We were all participating in that illusion together, and that person was helping by their demeanor, by their behavior, by their words, by their actions to in that's what I'm looking for, to embrace that energy. And energy is real, and we experienced that a lot early on. And so it does break the continuity if you see somebody who's spent $20,000 on their armor and who won't even cover their tennis shoes. But at the same time, when you see somebody who's all in tin can armor, behaving like the gentlest knight in the Middle Ages, you've been trained to that. And that's
Exactly.
part of where that interaction comes from.
That's exactly what I was saying. That's the
Okay.
difference.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And I miss that.
Thank you, Megan.
I've got something to interject in that, and that has to do with education. We all behave in ways that we believe are correct, and we all have over the decades we all have different experiences about the information about what is correct. So many of the first people in Ansteorra area playing this game were educated by literature, not by movies. They read the Nibelungenlied. They read the Helmskringa. They read books that had to do with the Middle Ages, and some of them written in the Middle Ages. And you get a feel for what's common and what's real from that literature, and therefore you can express it. You can try to express it, but it's founded on something that isn't written in the back room of a Hollywood studio and changed 50 times in order to please the producer. a lot of things that is literature now about the Middle Ages may be technically right, but they have no soul because they aren't paying attention to the history part of it. They're paying attention to the technical parts of it. And then they get that wrong quite often too. But what I'm trying to say is that the people coming in the SDA for the last 25 years or more are working off of information that is probably not as good as what the guy in the carpet armor had. And their behavior cannot be better than what they know anything about. It can't be. You could imagine stuff, but that's all hit or miss, and probably mostly miss. And if you actually know something about the time period which you're trying to convincingly insert yourself in interactions with people, then it's best to have some kind of real information to go from. And so I think all those people who relied on that early on have been outnumbered 1,000 to 1. And it's very difficult for you bobbing on the sea of, well, let's try that. Let's try this other thing. I have an idea. Well, to be heard, to wave your little flag and be taken with a modicum of seriousness. And I think that's why the culture has changed a lot. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that how do you fight a trend that's driven by education that's so vastly different from what we started with?
Jan?
I've got, everybody's got their own personal style.
Yes.
And what you do, but the sort of problem the fellow was bringing up is not just tied to newcomers.
No.
My lady at an event, we had, the first Bjornsburg event she'd been to in forever and ever. And I got involved in doing something with somebody. And she was going back to the parking area and bringing chairs and stuff up. And I figured, fine, she'd start bringing stuff. And by the time, she got part way, she'd have people helping her. Nobody did. She walked across the site several times, loaded down, and nobody offered to help. And she was dressed appropriately for an SCA event and stuff, and just, she might as well have been invisible. Now, the way to deal with this is not to go and talk to a bunch of the young folks or people who are just standing around watching her do this. I went to my son and I went to my daughter and I said, keep your eyes open. Whenever there's a lady carrying something, offer to help and do it in a courtly manner. I tried to have the example given rather than go and tell people you're not doing it right. Go do it right and let them see it. And I got myself disentangled from a couple of things and went around looking for ways that I could make a polite, courtly gesture. And I had my son and daughter doing the same thing. And, for me, about the only way to do anything is to be the person you're supposed to be. Be the example.
That's actually a perfect segue to my next question. Thank you. Which
Say
is,
again?
that's a perfect segue and bridge to my next question for you all, which is, who are the people that were exemplars in the Lions that were your models for that behavior that is that step above? Last week, Master Ivar was sharing some stories of someone who was his exemplar that he referred to as the lion's lion, and just what that person meant to him. And since it is so personal, I won't try and paraphrase it, but I'm curious who each of you saw as role models specific to your role as a lion, that helped to formulate your thoughts on that.
If you ask me to identify my top 10 lions, or my top 5 lions, or my top 3 lions, I would have to spend a week pulling over the list, tearing my hair out. There is no way I would do it. Fortunately, you didn't ask me that. You asked me for the one person who inspired me more than any other lion, and that is Tybar Moondragon. Tybar Moondragon changed the entire SCA to include what he believed in without ever once saying a word against anything other people believed in. That's phenomenal. His motto is patience and persistence, and he absolutely had patience and persistence in everything he did. Fencing exists because Tyvar existed and wanted fencing to exist. And when people started saying fencers are just cowards who are afraid to be hit, he didn't argue, he didn't complain. He picked up a piece of rattan and went on the field. He said, no, I'm not. Not by saying it, by not being afraid of being hit. I remember one event when he showed up at 7 in the evening, and he picked up his hammer and he went over because someone was setting up a tent just then, and he walked over and helped them set up a tent. And then someone nearby was setting up a tent. At 1 in the morning, 6 hours later, he had never stopped setting up tents, and he suddenly realized his tent was still in his car. He didn't say, I'm going to spend 6 hours setting up a tent before I set up my own. That idea he'd have ignored. It's a stupid idea. It never crossed his mind. There was always somebody in front of him needing help, and he helped over and over and over and over and over again.
Robin, I have to stand so much with what you say of Tyvar. And remembering those early days at Burnett, talking about fencing, he talked for a process. He didn't talk against anything. And truly a noble quality.
It is one of my heartfelt sorrows that I never had an opportunity to just sit down and have a conversation with Tyvar.
And you never will.
And I never will now. But he was one of the people that virtually every single person I know in the SCA has had glowing things to say about. And I've only been in an event with him once, and that was Ansteorra 40th year. And every time he was around, he was marshalling, or I had other duties. And I was really hoping to get the chance to introduce myself and talk to him a little bit and maybe ask him to share some stories so that I could record them. But that just never happened. And that's one of the reasons that I started these chats, was to get as many people to come on so I can hear their stories and other people can hear their stories, and that I can hear stories of those that I never got to meet or never got to interact with, and keep that history.
Zubaydar, thank you. There is no greater statement you can make about Tyvar than what you just said. Every time I saw him, he was marshalling or had some other duty, because that's who he was. For me, he is the lion's lion, he is the pelican's pelican. And of course, for everyone, he is the Don's Don.
Indeed. Indeed.
Go ahead, someone follow that.
How?
Well, I will.
Please.
And it's just unfortunate that the two lions that Robin and I thought were the Lion's Lion are no longer with us, but mine was Sir Ricardo de Pisa.
Transmission.
On screen.
Captain, incoming transmission.
He was just but he buffered that with his sense of humor and his sense of fun and his dedication to the kingdom and the dream, and he believed in me when a lot of people didn't. And he and I talked for hours before I was ever a knight about what it was to be one. And but every time he showed up anywhere, I mean, the word went out through the camp, Ricardo's here. This is going to be a fun weekend, Ricardo's here. And it was going to be, I don't know. I'm not going to cry because Robin already has. And I'm not going to try to one-up him on this, but I miss him more than I can tell you. I don't know if anybody can see this. Maybe my camera probably won't focus, but Ricardo gave me that. It's a ring, and I have never taken it off, or it has never been away from my person since he gave it to me, whether I'm playing SCA or not playing SCA. I wear it every day of my life. And that was, so my Lion of Lions is Sir Ricardo de Pisa.
That is who Master Ivar named as well. And he used that phrase Lion of Lions for Sir Ricardo. One of the things that he described was that Sir Ricardo had an amazing ability to bring people together to a common cause and to get excited about a common cause. Very diverse people from all over the kingdom, not just a small elite specialized little group, but vast swaths of people. That he had a charisma and a natural leadership that just drew people to him and got them excited to be doing whatever it was that Ricardo was talking about. That he just had this natural leadership and people were just drawn to him. One of these days I want to have an evening of just inviting people to talk about those we've lost, and Ricardo is a name that has been brought up many, many times.
What was it, Robin? You used to describe my courts by the number of hankies.
That's the right way to do a court. If nobody ever cried, your court isn't real. If nobody ever laughed, it's too real.
But yeah, if we did what you're talking about, I think we'd all need boxes of hankies for that one.
Fair enough. We can put a big old disclaimer on the session.
Just grab a roll of toilet paper and go for it.
We've had some.
Put that out of context.
No, don't. Please.
Oh dear. Your Excellency Jan, is there anyone who particularly inspired you?
Well, it was a smaller circle.
Indeed.
It was like all the lions were people that were friends, and we certainly influenced each other and learned from each other, but I don't think anybody took on the role model aspect. I mean, I liked Ivar Battlescald a lot. He made everything better when he was there. He was just fun.
Mm-hmm.
whether he was playing the gruff Viking throwing the sword of state at the king, or he was playing a leprechaun as a quest station. He could, just be believable and make the whole experience better for being there. Orm is he's a personal friend. I mean, I met him at the first SCA fighter practice I ever went to.
Yeah, it was a combat on a bridge over water. We didn't know who the other guy was, but we weren't going to lose. We were taking it too seriously, I think. It turned out to be probably the best contact I made on the field. Go ahead.
And Megan, I made her a lion in spite of the fact that people might have thought I was favoring my friend's lady, and that didn't have anything to do with it. It was just I thought she was the person who was deserving. Because thinking politically, I thought, gee, I really ought to make somebody from the southern part of the kingdom. Nah, this is the Lions. This, you take the candidate you think fits. And, to heck with, if somebody's going to criticize me or not understand, anybody who's a lion, if they're a good lion, everybody's going to know it. They'll do it their own way and in their own style, but they don't need to have badges. They don't need to, special recognition to stand out. They stand out by the nature of who and what they are. And the lion is merely recognizing who and what they are.
Don't worry, Your Excellency. As I recall, the next crown after you did make someone from the south. So if you made a mistake by making a third one from the north, the next one corrected your problem. What nobody else except he and I remember is that the fourth one who was from the south was Hrabia Jan himself.
Oh, that's right.
So you just said that there really isn't an emblem, but there is. There is the symbol of the lions is a lion. And I read a story once, not too terribly long ago, about a lion being made, and there wasn't a medallion at the time available for that lion, which is, of course, part of the ceremony. And the person who wrote it said that they were enormously touched when they saw Master Robin remove a medallion that had just been made for him and give it up because a medallion was needed and he had one.
And because I was honored to have it worn by Avery Shaw.
Indeed.
And to complete that story, so that it's not just about me, Martin Malone, immediately after that, made this medallion for me.
That's beautiful.
So it's not that I'm without a medallion. And he added a gold heart to it.
I see that.
He said that symbolized my giving away my medallion. To me, it symbolized the man who made this for someone, an award he couldn't carry himself. One of the incredible things about the Lions.
If I could mince words a bit here, my way of thinking, the crown does not make a lion. The crown recognizes one.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll never recognize all of them. There's more than one every 6 months who deserves it. It will never be true that everyone who deserves to be a lion, everyone who is a Lion of Ansteorra in the true sense, will wear the badge.
Well,
There are more people who deserve this than we can ever make, which is what makes it uniquely valuable.
Can any of you speak to times that you have passed down your award insignia other than the example that we just had of Robin?
I never had one. So
I was about to
don't
say
know.
that. The early Lions never had an insignia. We wear as a badge of honor the fact that we do not have an insignia.
Okay.
When did
Fair
the
enough.
insignia become part of the process of making a lion?
Okay, you've asked a herald's question.
Yeah, you
Let me
have.
go ahead and
Please.
when we submitted the name, the Lion of Ansteorra, we of course submitted a badge with it.
That's
The badge could pass immediately. The problem is that the name Lion of Ansteorra, Defender of the Dream, which was founded by King Jonathan and Queen Willow, conflicted with the previously passed order of the Lion of Atenvelt, Defender of the Dream, established by King Jonathan and Queen Willow. Because they were King and Queen of Atenvelt, they established this order. A few months later, they became King and Queen of the new Kingdom of Ansteorra, and they established an order with the exact same name. And we had to get Atenvelt's permission to register the name.
Remember that.
The badge was registered with the name. So the badge has existed since about 80-81. When did people start actually wearing it? I can't give an exact definition, but everyone who was a member had the right to wear it starting as soon as it was passed. When was it first used? The first actual use of the badge that I remember, by the way, the badge is right there. It's the lion overall on the black star.
But Robin, what I was talking about was when did a token of the insignia get passed down in court when a new lion was made? Because that was never.
It isn't always. Even today, that's not standard. King Sigmund, as Count, called up me and Dupre. I mean, he'd already stepped down, gave us our scrolls for the white scarf, and then announced that he was glad that he was now the first crown of Ansteorra who had given something, either insignia or a scroll, to every person who'd gotten an award. The fact that you actually got anything at all was new. I mean, some scrolls existed from the 70s, but that crown in 81 was the first crown who actually gave something to everyone they'd made that year, that reign. And they didn't do it during the reign because we got our scrolls later.
Yeah, I believe it.
I got a white scarf immediately, but it didn't come from the crown. It came from Tyber.
Yeah. I received from Jan a
So
personal.
it's not true even today that we all get, and I did not get a lion medallion when I was made a lion in 1990.
Gotcha.
There was no shame if Avery had not gotten one. That was a normal thing. You don't always get the insignia because people don't go out of their way to make lion insignia. And the only way you will get insignia is if someone made a lion for you, not knowing who the crown was going to choose. That doesn't happen. People make lots and lots of thistles, not knowing who the crown is going to give it to. People make white scarves, not knowing who the crown is going to give it to. People weave irises or stars, not knowing who it's going to be given to. No one makes a lion for someone not knowing who they are. Nobody. So, you know, that was, I think, 2 years ago. So in 2018, it was not yet established that every crown, that everyone who got a lion would get a medallion. And I don't think it's true now.
Gotcha.
It just happened that the king made the comment that he did not have a medallion to give. And I'm standing up there and I'm looking down at my medallion and I'm looking up at Avery and I'm looking up at King Miguel and Queen Connell. And I couldn't just stand there.
Yeah.
That's all. It's not standard that everyone gets one.
Okay. Thank you for that
Did-
clarification.
Receive a personal token of a lion from Jan, but it was a personal token and it's too delicate. It's pure silver and it's too delicate to wear. So I keep it in a treasure box.
So I had asked a lion or chatted with a lion some years back about were there specific traditions of the lions? And he said that there was only one that he knew of. And it was a little bit alarming to me. And that was that new lions are greeted by the other lions, and they greet each other by raking their fingernails down the new lion. And I didn't know if that was accurate or not in your personal experiences.
It is accurate and came into being with the first 3 lions.
Okay.
And it came into being spontaneously.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I think it was Ebon, actually.
Was it?
I think it was Ebon.
Okay. And it was one of those things that happened once, and then we all looked at each other and said, next time, that worked. Let's do it again. And again became a tradition.
Yep.
And it's not a tradition that all lions do.
Yeah.
I've never done it. I never will.
Why
And
not?
there's nothing wrong with that. You do what you believe in, and I will do what I believe in.
It's not a hazing or a sign of you must prove something. It's an embrace, if you will.
Mhm.
You're lion. You'll understand this. Let's, and it's just we call it the rake. And it started, as I said, spontaneously, was well received because it made them feel like, okay, we're part of this. I'm part of this. And so we have continued to do it, and we have enjoyed the look in people's eyes as we did it. But when I say we, I know most lions now that I know do it. So is it a widespread, Robin?
What?
I don't know if more or less than half of the lions do it. I suspect at least a third of them do. I expect at least a third of them
Yeah.
don't. But we are all going to be what we believe in.
And you know what?
I don't want you to be Robin, and I'm not going to be Megan.
And that's another defining characteristic of the lions, is that we are not a we. We are a bunch of individuals.
Yes.
And I did take offense at something on the Lions page at one point when somebody said, we must do this. No, we have never been a we, that's not what the lions are. And the lions tend to act as individuals from their hearts, and that heart informs who they are and what they are, and that's wonderful. It's part of the magic of the lions.
Amen.
So my last planned question for the evening is there a moment in Ansteorran history that you can think of that was I struggled with how to phrase this, so please bear with me. That was a pivotal moment in Ansteorran history in which the actions of a lion shaped our immediate history at that time, or that pivotal event, if that makes sense.
One? No, there's 100.
Yeah, Robin. Good answer. Good answer.
I don't know.
I think that when the lions, actually, it wasn't the lions then, because we asked later for the lions to take custody of it. The Sword of State was first brought to the crown, not by the lions, but by the ship Raven that I was talking to you about earlier, that had no physical boards and yet sailed all over Ansteorra and beyond. Okay. And in the time of Sigmund, the lions, most of whom were sailed on the Raven, with the permission of the Raven crew, said, what if this became something that was in the custody of the lions? And that's when that tradition of the Sword of State and how we give and take the Sword of State between crowns in that dangerous time between the laying down of the crown and when another crown comes to take the crown onto their heads. When the Sword of State goes to the lions, between that was established by the first 4 lions of Ansteorra. And I think that was a very, very important tradition for our kingdom. And I think that I think that it helped to offer fabric to what we became as a kingdom, because it was something that people could coalesce around.
I think that the sort of state had a whole lot of meaning to many people for different reasons. Obviously, the knights were made dubbed with the sword. They swore on the sword their fealty. So there was a whole lot of meaning of the sort of state for that group of people. When it was given, it was typically in the name of the people to be for the crown to represent the people. So there were a lot of different connections, and it depended on, you know, from what quarter you were standing and your relationship to that. It was a tool that was extremely symbolic. It was a symbol of the state, essentially. And
It was a symbol of the people too, because it was granted, believe it or not, it was granted to the kings to hold for the people for a reign.
Yeah.
It still is.
And
It's
so
not the king's sword, it's
and
the people's sword.
and so I don't think that I know of another symbol. I mean, we have a sort of state now which is serving the same purpose. It's serving the same function. Its lineage is extremely worthy, and I believe pretty much universally accepted as being a good
Perfect.
a good heir to the previous one. But there are other things out there that Lions have done that I personally have not even heard of yet. But I am certain, based on the character of so many of them, that they have intervened in some event somewhere and changed its directions. Even if it's just getting people to stop and think, as opposed to rushing headlong in a direction that may not have been the best choice. And that's a very broad generality, but I would say that probably sums up the majority of things that you've been asking about.
I have two I wish to bring up.
I was going to ask you.
There was a moment when Inman McMaw and Frederick von Sternwald, who was the king, by the way, and Frederick von Sternwald, who was the kingdom's seneschal, stood up to the board of directors and said, "No, Ansteorra matters to us more than a corporation does," and made it stick. Frederick was not a lion when he did that. Frederick was a lion by the time Inman stood down as king, because he was called up and he was made Lion of Ansteorra, public defender of the dream, because he was the lawyer who was defending us.
That's beautiful.
But there was another moment. It's not a single moment. The moment happens every 6 months. When someone who was not yet a Lion of Ansteorra decided to recreate the cult of Gloriana in the Principality of Ansteorra.
Could you please
Actually,
repeat
before
that? I didn't hear you, Robin.
The cult of Gloriana was recreated. The cult of Queen Elizabeth I, the Great Queen.
Right.
And when he stood up and asked his friends to join him and said, "I, Tyvar Moondragon, swear upon my honor and upon my sword to defend the life of our queen and to preserve her good name and honor." And the queens didn't care for a while. And then the queens thought, okay, I know this is going to happen for a while. And then Queen Siglinda, who became a lion, said, "I love this. I believe in this." And that cult exists today, the cult of the queen. The Fencers of Ansteorra believe in their queen and follow their queen, and every 6 months, And I have sworn over and over again, following Tyvar Moondragon, I, Robin of Gilwell, swear upon my honor and upon my sword to defend the life of our queen and to preserve her good name and honor. And I tell you, at next Queen's Champion tournament, that over 100 of us are going to stand there and say, I, Tyvar Moondragon, swear upon my honor and upon my sword to defend the life of our queen and to preserve her good name and honor. That is a moment where a Lion of Ansteorra changed Ansteorra forever.
Was he lion then?
What?
He was,
Was he a
not
lion? No.
Yeah.
He wasn't a lord yet. He started it in the kingdom of Aidenville. I don't think it was the region of Ansteorra yet when he started.
Right.
Right. It was very, very early.
I think it was early also. I think we only were the wastelands of Ansteorra.
He
But I-
became a lion in 93. And in 93, in January of 93, when William and Catherine named him Lion of Ansteorra, I stopped recommending a lion to every crown of Ansteorra.
I guess we know who that would have been.
Okay, I'm not in the rapier community, but you saying that, Robin, it got me. I really hope that I'm able to witness that moment.
Please come to Queens. I promise you it will happen.
I will do my best to be there.
I hope we can all come to Queens in
As-
person.
I hope there is a Queens.
Yeah.
We'll be there eventually.
Oh, I've got a small pedestrian one to point out.
I don't think there
I
are any
was at
pedestrian
the,
lion stories.
Hmm?
I don't think there are any pedestrian lion stories, though.
Well, at Vladislav's coronation,
Hmm.
they had the old king had stepped down and they left the crowns with the thrones, and they summoned the knights forward who stayed around on guard, until they were going to have the coronation. Now, this is a very Ansteorran thing to do. Places like the East Kingdom and the Mid-Realm, for a while, they had this thing about, we are never without a king and the crown must pass hand to hand and, stuff of that order. But we were sitting there waiting, and Galen of Bristol started talking to some other people the story of how that custom started. And he actually got it right. I don't know if the names of the reigns were right, but there was a coronation and it was taking place at, it was an unusual camp, but it was a wooded site in Oklahoma. And Hector was the outgoing king. And he was just up there and he had to catch a flight out of Oklahoma City to get back to Houston. And he was on a real tight time schedule. And Michael of Monmouthshire was going to be the new king. And somebody became ill at the event, and Michael had taken them into town to the emergency room. And time started pressing. And finally, Hector said, I've got to step down. I've got an airplane to catch. And everybody was rather unsure of what to do. And I just stepped up and said, do it, step down. And he stepped down and we left the crowns on the thrones. And I just summoned every fighter who was there. And I got the knights first and I said, arm yourself. And I had them go put on armor, get weapons. They can, I said, if you got a real one, bring a real one. And I put people on guard duty around the thrones and crowns of Ansteorra. until Michael was able to finish up and come back. And everyone I've been at since then, that has been the custom, that the knights come and will guard the regalia of the crown in the interim between reigns. And I've noticed that like at that event, they actually had a sizable amount of time. They let the one king have a long, dragged out last court. And Vlad, you know, he was having fun. He didn't want to sit through a long, dragged out, you know, teary-eyed last court. And, you know, let them do it. And then there was a gap. And then, you know, he did his dramatic entrance, you know, and took the crown and stuff. But it's one custom I had a small piece of, just, you know, kind of dealing with the situation as it came up.
I remember that. That was fun too.
But, you know, and that was just what a lion does, you know, you take it and put it into a medieval context. I mean, you know, we're going to guard the regalia till the prince returns to claim his right. And instead of being an awkward pause, it became part of the event. And it was good enough that they're still continuing it on.
Yeah, but everybody had a chance to go get refreshments or go to the bathroom or whatever. It went on, how'd it go on for about an hour?
Yeah.
About. It was 1988. It was Hector and Rowan 2 stepping down and Michael and Rebecca 1 stepping up.
And it was a
Right.
perfect example of seizing the moment, which was sort of a lion thing to do.
Yeah.
Zubaida, do you know, this is it was a defining moment, though it has never been repeated, but it did affect the culture of Ansteorra. Do you know about how Lloyd was acclaimed king?
I'm not sure that I do.
We had come through a troubled time in our kingdom. Okay, there was some stress, and Lloyd was field coroneted essentially. And now we were friends, Lloyd, Orm, myself, Jan, Ivar, but not like intimate friends. We knew each other and had a cord between us in these Middle Ages. Okay. But there was that energy that runs between lions also between us. And Lloyd was not yet a lion, but Orman, myself, and Jan, no, not Jan.
Ivar.
No, I wasn't a lion even. It was a couple of people who became lions. It was not even Ivar, it was Orm. But Ivar and Orm got together and said, you know, if we had had this problem in Sweden or Denmark, we would solve it thus. We would take this king to acclaim him and see if the people would acclaim him king. Now you're talking about a very politically charged environment here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, very, very politically charged environment. And when Lloyd became king, tell me if I leave out any parts, but I think to make a long story short, we just right then.
No, this was at
Was it a separate event?
yeah, it was at the Norse event.
Oh, I was at the Alting afterwards. Okay, so he had not been king very long, and he was. Tell it as you remember it. You'll do better.
Jan will remember that the Alting, the first Alting was going to be held, and he and I think it was Sigmund were at my place, and we were in the forge, and I was forging a oath ring, and it's essentially like a very large twisted metal ring with serpent heads on either end, and I was appointed to be the lawgiver. So we were at the Alting, and they were discussing matters of law within the kingdom. A lot of it was not necessarily law, but some of it was tradition. Some of it was proposals about what to do about certain things, and this was totally outside of the realm of the way business was conducted when you have a king in the SCA. this was along the lines of the Altings out of
History.
out of Greenland and Iceland. And so what we had here going was people coming up with complaints and whatnot. And we had a home gang and a couple of fights and things settled that way. And then the subject about what the legitimacy of the claim that the new king was legitimate. And we had Lloyd sitting down there, and if anybody knows Lloyd, he can sit on a log and smolder a fire into existence if it suits him. And he was starting to smoke a little bit. And we were talking about whether or not he's legitimately the king. And he
in front of his face here.
Yeah. And so he let it ride until the question was put to the populace. And the vote came in with a claim, yes, he's the king.
Now,
and so to do it in the Norse way, they ran over and
put him on a shield.
Put a shield on the ground and had him stand on it, and they hoisted it to their shoulders and they carried him around the entire encampment.
What do you mean they?
There was a lot of people.
It was you too. But anyway, the underlying
while they were lifting it.
Huh?
And he didn't fall off while they were lifting it.
That's right, he did.
And the underlying energy here was one of accord. It was one of acclaim. It was one of unity. So I think certainly there was that sense of that existed, so that he wasn't really anxious, but he was like, Lloyd, that look in his eye, Orm, Megan, Ivar, what are you about to do? And how am I a part of this? And do I really want this to happen?
I'm going to trust you, but I'm taking a big risk here, buddy. Don't screw up.
And there was that look in his eye. And so he lifted him up on the shield and paraded him around the list field before the populace and said, shall this man be our king? And of course, there was solid acclaim, but it was very affirming, very unifying, and very, very special. And it was the kind of thing that would happen actually not very infrequently then. It was fairly common, the kinds of things that we would do in character of our respective places to create a good moment that was good for everybody.
I got that idea out of the Helden's Kringa. There's a couple of instances where kings were made by acclaim and paraded around on the shield. And I'm right there.
Okay.
And so it wasn't
without precedent.
No, it wasn't exactly extemporaneous, but it had that feeling. And most of the people there didn't know it was coming, including Lloyd. And
that, Lloyd, the lion that he became, the lion that he already was and just hadn't been recognized yet, just rolled with it. And that was par for the course at that time.
So
there was a moment I remember of a lion that it just felt right, although it felt wrong at first. It was at the time, every knight swore his oath of fealty individually, which meant that Coronation Court went on for bloody ever, and everyone who wasn't a knight hated it. But Seamus had just been crowned. All the knights came up, and each knight went up, knelt before the king, and gave their oath of fealty. And then one knight did not. He walked up, he turned his back on the king. And Jan said, Seamus is king. If you would question that, you must answer to me. And it just felt so good. And Jan, I don't know if I have ever told you how perfect that moment was for me.
Well, it also has good background because nobody had proclaimed him king. And the first person to do so would be greatly rewarded. So
I did not know that. But He walked up there and he turned his back on his king, and I went, "What the hell?" And he said, "Seamus is king. If you would question that, you will answer to me." It just felt perfect. As perfect as Inman calling us to war. Most of you will never see Inman calling the kingdom to war, but at that moment he was king, and if he led us into hell, we would have followed.
No.
And there were dozens of those kinds of things back then. You know, they were not scripted. They were not with a herald's permission. Excuse me, Robin. They were not. They were so spontaneous, and everybody played. Everybody played, and they played off of each other, and they played off of the moment, and it was a beautiful tapestry.
It was really fun too.
Oh yeah.
It was.
The
I mean, the
best role
bottom
play-
line was it's just fun, plain old fun.
It just
Oh, yeah,
was.
it was. And the best role playing was not about getting up and standing there and being the center of attention. It was taking a part and leaving room for everybody else to be involved.
Yeah.
Okay. Not everybody could maybe muster getting up and doing something or whatever, or taking part, but many people did. And I think that was that joint experience was very bonding. And I think that the unity of Ansteorra was unfathomable to many of the kingdoms around us, because we had
They said so.
we had we were a tough nut to attack on any kind of level for a very, very long time because of that unity. And it was because we played hard together.
We did.
We
Yeah.
enjoyed each other. I mean, that's not to say that there were not squabbles and disagreements and opposite positions, but even within those things, those people played together. Okay, I think that's probably the most important part of persona play. The reason why it was important and why it was actually was significant is the fact that it was a bonding experience for all the participants.
So I think if I could make a wish tonight, it would be that somebody would start a book club of period books that they recommended that would help bring that kind of persona play back, and like share it with the kingdom, and like everybody get together and read this book and we can discuss it. Because I think the comment that you made earlier about in the early days there wasn't a whole lot of entertainment that was researched or held up as being exemplar. People read books, and they went to that original source material, and they were reading Beowulf, and they were reading
Right.
other things from that period. If I could just wave a magic wand,
I know that when Orm and I and Ivar first met, I had been reading the Tamba Cooley, Arset, various other lesser known Irish sagas, essentially. They're the epic pieces. Orm had a copy of the Helm's Kringla, and I had some of those from Ireland as well. And one that I got to borrow for 4 days was the Book of Leinster. So I had, studied that as hard as I could for 4 days twice, because I got it on interlibrary loan. And this was all before I came to the SCA. So that was my big interest at the time. And then Ivar had been doing the same thing with a lot of the Scandinavian sagas, and so had Orm. And when we met from our respective positions via our literature. And so I wasn't about their literature. I was about my life, quote, life in Ireland, right? And I would walk up and down the cliff sides and at events. I have to talk about it now. Brian Boru is dead, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And, it was an immersion that we personally have not experienced since. And it probably lasted for about the first 12 years.
And you
12
kept
to 15.
and you just kept going on and on about Clontarf too. you
Yeah,
know?
I did. And there was the problem of how do I deal with these two Scandinavians who seem to be befriending, and it wasn't a case of some silly little make war with the Scandinavian dudes. It was a real type of thing that we would go back and forth with at table while we were dicing,
Mhm.
and it would come up and it would crop up in fun ways. And it was all born from the literature.
Would you be willing to put the names of those books in the chat for those who are not familiar with them?
I'd have to go to the library and sort them out. Can I email them to you for the
Yes,
future?
please. Yes, please. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
In high school, I made a study of Mallory, and there are several derivations of that by other authors. But what that does is that gives you a flavor for how of speech and the way things are expressed in the French medieval period. If you've ever been around Willow and she's talking about chivalry and courtly love and all that type of stuff, she's doing the same thing. She's drawing from those same kinds of sources. If you don't have a background in it, it's gibberish what she's saying to you because the vocabulary is different, the expectation of concept is different than what is presented now, and you don't have anything common to talk about there, except maybe some high points and low points, but the meat of it is mostly gone.
Wouldn't it be perfect if somebody in period, several people in period had gotten together to discuss what perfect period behavior was? Wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody had written down their days of discussion? Wouldn't it be helpful if such a book had been written and read by people all over Europe who all said this was correct? And wouldn't it be helpful if such a book were available to us today? They did, it is. The Book of the Courtier, Baldassare Castiglione. And I just put it in the comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
That is Renaissance proper courtly behavior.
Right. There's a lot of guidance that's written down, and if you're looking for it and find it and look into it and understand it, you will have a far better understanding than if you're just trying to make up everything up as you go along. They're very difficult to even get close.
Beta, if you'd like a little bit of help gathering some period or later than period, but period reflecting sources, that's my job. I'm a librarian.
Ooh.
And I'm 100% willing to help sort out any kind of recommended reading list if anybody has some ideas, and track down where people could get easy to get a hold of copies right now, if that's something folks are interested in doing.
Yes. Have you considered opening a book club?
I run a couple of them right now, so we'll just roll it in with the rest of them.
Okay, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I could recommend just like Njal Saga. That's full of so many stories.
Yeah.
That just is wonderful. Tirant LeBlanc. That's one of the books that corrupted Don Quixote. One of the
Yes.
Just the Mort d'Arthur. It's. I've always found it interesting. All the movies have Lancelot having a physical affair with Guinevere. If you read Le Mort d'Arthur, 3 times they tell the story of him rescuing her when she was going to be burned at the stake because you know, of indiscretions. In only one of them was there a physical relationship between them, because de Mort d'Arthur draws from so many sources and kind of shakes them in a bag. I mean, there's just tons of stuff out there.
I'm going to make a thread on the Kingdom group, Facebook group, and talk about, mention this topic. And if you would be willing to add these books to that, I will grab the ones from the chat and post those as well. But if any others come to mind, I think other people would really enjoy kind of getting a good book list.
Something that
a
helps
wonderful thing.
is just like I've got this book of nursery tales from Ireland. It gives you a sense of how people thought, about how they behaved. It was not great heroic epics, but it gave you the linguistic insight into the daily life of a person, you know?
Yeah, we've got several books. There's one that I draw from. It's a fellow who went around Scandinavia in the 1800s gathering folk tales. And he would get the same folk tale maybe 10 or 12 times, but they were all variations of the same story. But primarily from that, and there were lots of different stories, primarily from that, you found out that the story kept going further and further and further back in time. And it was placed, and eventually was in the Viking era, and you learned all kinds of things about things that lived in burial mounds, the Hulder folk, which were half cows, and I had a cow's tail and hooves. You had various customs about how to deal with the Fae. Things that don't come up in high literature very much, except in very, very passing throwaway type of comment. They don't go into any detail about it, but it was the common person's belief system, and a lot of it was very, very old, way before the Christian church ever had any sway in that part of the world. Obviously, the Eddas play a lot into it as far as attitudes about Scandinavian attitudes early on. So there's lots of things you could add to that. Now I'm talking about there's got to be a whole lot of stuff that's Middle Eastern that I'm not familiar with, but somebody with that type of persona needs to be looking at. They need to dig up that source material and be looking at it. It's almost imperative that if you're going to try to role play somebody from someplace, you need to have some kind of solid information about it.
I don't have a lot of the books that I used to read handy, but this is the one I never kept. It's called Chivalry, and it's ponderous.
Yes,
but it's written by Leon Gautier, and it's the everyday life of the medieval knight, and it's I think it's a required reading for everybody that actually aspires to knighthood.
Wasn't there an entire series of books, and Robin, you might know about this, that was the everyday life of, that were real common back in the early SCA days? The everyday life of
Would that be the Gies books?
Pardon me?
The Gies books, Gies?
Maybe so.
Could be, but not this one.
Okay.
Everyday life in a castle, everyday life in a medieval town.
That's it. Orm's going to look up some too that I haven't put down.
Yeah, that's a different series.
I totally had forgotten this. I read the Nibelungenlied in high school because I just was so interested in the history of this period. And I read the Nibelungenlied in high school in Middle German. And I didn't do it, and that's like saying I read, Beowulf in the original, except that at the time I had a Middle German dictionary on one side and my teacher on the other, and I'd like make a few more stanzas and a few more stanzas and a few more stanzas. Okay, so I'm not saying this was a polished feat, but it interested me so much that I pursued it. And I had totally forgotten about that, but I had some kind of hooks to hang Ivar and Orm's interests and culture on because of that. So reading many things, not just your own persona origin stories, but reading stuff from literature from many directions is really helpful in playing persona.
The sources are infinite, from Gilgamesh to Shakespeare, and there's an infinite number of things in between. I want to emphasize Tirant LeBlanc that was suggested by Jan. This copy was given to me by Alessandro Oliphant, who may have been who showed it to Jan. I don't know, because that's his wife. But the number of sources is incredible. Go read Shakespeare. No, never read Shakespeare. Go watch Shakespeare.
Right.
Go read Chaucer. Or better yet, have someone read it to you, because that's clearly what he intended. There was a line in there where he says, if you don't want this tale, turn the page and hear another one, which means he clearly expects somebody to be reading it to everyone else.
Yeah. And for watching Shakespeare, the BBC stuff is really good.
But the fact is, the period sources are all over the place.
They are.
You can't really use Shakespeare as in the historical context. He takes way too many liberties. But the
That's
plays
right. It is
themselves
historical for the late 1500s.
Yeah, but the
Hamlet.
plays themselves are damn fun.
Shakespeare is Renaissance. When he's telling medieval tales, he's Renaissance. It's my focus. It's not Inman's, even when he's talking about Inman's period.
Okay, and the Celts and Vikings, that's a really good one.
I have a book that
Anglo-Saxon.
someday I'm going to pass along. I did not ever get to meet Sir Emrys, but at his estate sale, they sold off some of the books from his private collection that were important to him, and that I would imagine helped to define his views. And I purchased one of them so that I would have an appropriate gift if someone that I cared about deeply ever became a knight. And so I have Emrys's copy of Don Quixote. And I will be hanging on to that for a long time, until the right opportunity comes along, because I've never heard him described in anything other than reverent tones of being a knight's knight, that he was one of those pinnacle examples. And if that's what that was one of his source references, or it just seemed like a good idea. But yeah.
Well, you've heard right, I think.
Yeah, there's some good stuff there.
Having knighted him, Emrys was one of a kind. And the thing about it is Emrys, before he was a knight, and Emrys after he was a knight, were one and the same. He'd give of himself before, he gave of himself after. He just put a white belt and a chain on him. So, he's just a good person, period. And, the book.
I'm sorry, you faded out for a moment and I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said, I hope that whoever you care about deeply finally gets that book.
Well, I will know the right moment when it happens, but until then, it's wrapped in archival paper and preserved, and
Sounds good.
I believe that there are ways to tangibly bring artifacts forward from those early days. Alessandra mentioned some weeks ago about lighting the flame and doing little things to connect traditions of the past to the present where people may not have had those examples. And that stuck with me, and that's why I bought that book from the estate, was to try and make a tangible link between someone that people I admired, because as I said, I never got to meet him, but people I respect have spoken so highly of him. To be able to have an artifact to kind of be a bridge just seemed like a good thing. So someday I'll meet the right person that it needs to go to.
You know, bridges is something we ought to be building right now.
Mm-hmm.
There seem to be a lot of them getting burned. But I worry, having, of course, what can you do about Facebook and such? But I worry that people have lost the idea of what Ansteorra was. It was a place where none of that mattered out there. It was a place where the things that mattered to each of us drew us in to come together. And in a mundane world, I wouldn't know some of the people that I knew in Ansteorra. You know, you'd have a garage mechanic who was a knight, and his squires might be doctors or professional business people, or vice versa. People who would never have met, never become friends, never got to know each other, were drawn into this circumstance that they came to love.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the love of that place, the thing that was created here, that just kind of pushed all the dark away and let us play in the light for a while. God, I'd like to see that happen again. Yeah, I mean, it's not happening in America. If it could happen in Ansteorra, maybe it'd spread out.
It has always happened in Ansteorra. I had a flat tire coming from an event a few years ago. Some guy I did not know stopped, helped me change the tire. A year and a half later, Jason was my king. That's how I met Jason.
Is
On
it?
the side of the road, and he came to help me. Why? Because I'm wearing a tunic. Because I'm an Ansteorran. That exists. That has always existed. And that has always been true, that has not been all that we are. We've always been too selfish. We've always been too focused on our own thing. And we have always occasionally risen above it. Ansteorra will be on the precipice forever. It always has been. Come on. You know how many people you hated and you thought were going to destroy Ansteorra when you were at your most active. You know who you fought against. And you know that if you saw them right now on the side of the road, you'd stop and you'd change their tire. And that if you saw them at the side of the road at the time you were most upset with them, you'd have stopped and helped them change a tire, and they'd have stopped and helped you change a tire.
Right.
It's never been average. It's always been our best. We always have to keep focusing on, let's try to be our best. And if the Lions are doing anything worth doing, it's reminding each other, including each other, stop that crap. Be your best.
Yeah.
You don't focus. I mean, you don't. I don't know. What did Heimlich say? Well, I'm fishing for something here, but it's in accord with what Robin's saying. You bring forth what you gaze on. And if we're always looking at what's wrong, then, what are you wallowing in? But if you aspire to something better and connect at that level, then it will be better. I think there's a lot of flame that can be relit here, actually, Zubeda.
Yeah. The point is, we got to light the fire so people know where to come.
Yeah.
Every lion here has been annoyed with me at some time.
No.
I didn't hear you, Robin.
Oh, Chuck, you cannot tell me. But every lion here has supported me at some time too. The goal is not to be perfect. We're not going to do that.
You're right twice there. 3 times.
The goal is not to not fall down. We're not going to do that. The goal is to get up again. Over and over and over again, because we're going to fall down again.
It's to be your best self and have the compassion to allow others to be their best self too.
Yeah. But tomorrow I'm going to screw up. I'm going to fuck up. I hope I get up and try to do well afterwards. And I hope I can help make it possible for someone else to stand up again and do their best again after they screw up.
Yeah.
Thus endeth the sermon.
Now I'm annoyed with you again.
Oh, good. I've done my job.
Yes, you have.
So here's one last question for you guys. What is a topic of a historical nature that would make you want to show up and tell me stories?
Oh,
read it again.
What is a topic of a Ansteorran historical nature that would make you want to show up and tell me more stories?
People who listen.
You've had an audience all night.
How about, now this is probably off the mark by a whole lot, but how about people that are from Ansteorra that we ourselves have considered to be, let us say, not playing at the top of their game, leave Ansteorra and go out and make an incredible impression on wherever they go to live.
Oh, we've had some good ones there.
As an Ansteorran, are a representative of us, and they do a heck of a job.
There used to be a saying, what do you call people who go to other people's kingdoms and fight crown? What do you call Ansteorrans who go to other people's kingdoms and fight crown? King?
Your
Majesty.
Majesty.
That's it. I mean, that's a common, it's a common joke. It was around many years ago. I don't know if it still is, but it wasn't funny because it was false and just kind of making light of it. It was funny because it was ironic. We had kind of thought, oh, well, he can't compete at the top of the lists here, and he goes off and he becomes king somewhere else. That was a kind of a backhanded compliment to ourselves as a unit of culture. And maybe a point of pride, but there's some stories there. I don't know very many of them. I know a few, and that's just a kind of a kickstart to get other people thinking, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be a fun topic.
Do you know of expatriate Ansteorrans that we could drag into that conversation?
I don't know where they are.
No idea.
I mean, some of these happened a few decades ago.
40 years ago.
Okay.
We actually had a visit from Master Corwin.
Yes.
He came and told stories after His Grace Jonathan passed away.
You can get Corwin anytime you want. All you got to do is ask.
Yeah, and I think he enjoyed 40th too. We sure enjoyed seeing him.
There was a wonderful young man that went that was knighted here by the name of Harold Bodvarson.
What?
You remember him, Robin?
Oh yeah.
I liked Harold.
And Harold moved to Atlantia.
Who?
We might be able to reach out to him. I can.
Didn't Damon of Oil become king of the East? Yeah.
You
Who
could
did?
probably try to get in touch with Duke Anton in Callantyr. He was Sir Corwin out of Finnegoth Squire. And then we exported him, and now he's the every other king of Callantyr for the past, I don't know, 10 years or so. If he just decides he wants to.
Well,
There's
see,
Freya.
we had
Freya
Sir,
Gerritsen, yeah.
Yeah, Freya Gerritsen.
remember Sir Narlik?
No.
Narlik. Oh God.
Sir
yes,
Narlik
yes.
Wolferson. Yeah, he had a squire by the name of Hrothgar of Farley.
Mhm.
Probably all remember Hrothgar. But he went off to Atlantia and became king. He's a friend of mine on Facebook. I can contact him. Maybe he'd show up too.
That'd be wonderful.
The one I was thinking about was Damon of Boyle.
Uh-huh.
And I have no idea
Oh, God.
how to get a hold of him.
Damon the Boiled.
Yeah, Damon.
Well, we had some fun times. But, you know, I like all that, but I kind of like stories that connect us to Ansteorrans. I mean, who stayed here, who are here, who play here, who are still part of this story here. I don't know. What else?
I'll tell you a couple people I really believe can tell good stories well and that know a lot of Ansteorran history.
Okay.
Duke Mahadi, Avery Shaw.
I don't know Avery.
Avery was made a lion 2 years ago. He's the one wearing my old lion medallion. He's been a White Scarf for about 15 years. He's been a Master of Defense for 4. He's been a Pelican for 3. He's been Kingdom Seneschal in the last year. He does a lot. He goes to a lot of kingdoms and knows the difference between what we do and what they do, and can describe it. He described the problem of crowns this way. He said, "Do you know why you cannot house train a monkey? Monkeys are arboreal, which means that when they shit, it's gone forever. It falls to the ground. They never go to the ground. It doesn't exist. Other people have to deal with it. They're still up in the trees." He said, "Crowns are monkeys. They cause shit. They never have to deal with it. Other people have to."
Not
Be nice.
totally correct analogy there.
Be nice.
The point is, it makes a real point.
Mr. Harold, I got a technical question for you. Master of Defense, you are Don Robin of Gilwell. How do we address the Master of Defense now that you are Master of Defense?
The
What's his
technical
term?
term is master, but that's been my title since the 80s and nobody's ever cared.
Well, how do you prefer to be called, Don or Master?
Quite frankly, if you care what title people are using, then there's a problem.
No, I care
I am
what people
sufficient. No,
want for
I'm
them.
not ignoring your question. I'm getting there. Okay. I am sufficiently egotistical that I don't believe my highest fencing title is Don, and I don't believe my highest fencing title is Master. I actually believe my highest fencing title is Robin. I don't care what you say. I had a queen call me up and say, "Don Robin." Oh, I'm sorry. I mean Master Robin. I said, "Your Majesty, you can never offend me by calling me a Don." I've been called Don Robin. Don has been my highest title from 81 to 84.
That's what I was gonna. Well,
That's all. 3 years.
and the Dons, I hold the Dons in such high esteem that to me it's a term of honor. So you know.
I've been called Don Robin in Pelican and Laurel circles where I'm only there because I have a higher title. When Rhiannon's daughter, Jackie, was about 2 or 3 and started talking, she called me Don Robin. when she was about 4 or 5, she started learning about titles and started punctiliously calling me Master Don Robin.
Okay.
That's when I realized my name is Don Robin.
Before we
I
ever
don't
met,
care.
I had been told that you preferred using Don Robin, even though you were a pelican and later Master
I
Defender.
always used Don Robin on the fencing field because it was my highest fencing title. For the same reason, for years when I was a pelican but not a laurel, I put on the form for body competitions Baron Robin because I would not use master in an arts context when I was not a laurel. Since I became a laurel, I used Master Robin in body competitions. But until I was a laurel, I would not use master then, even though it was my highest title. Until 2015, I would not use master in a fencing context because even though it was not an SCA fencing title, Master of Arms is a fencing title, and I would not use it until I had it. Now, if someone calls me master on the fencing field, no problem. But the real answer is, I don't care. It is not my goal that the white scarf or the white collar make me cool. It is my goal that a white scarf on my shoulder or a white collar around my neck will make the scarf and the collar cool. I don't always live up to that, but that's my goal.
Thank you for your answer.
Well, we are about half an hour past our appointed ending time.
Oh my God.
And I'm utterly delighted because I love it when conversations just kind of grow and evolve and are wonderful. So, but I have already ignored a knock at the door, so I should probably go ahead and end this for tonight. I deeply, deeply appreciate everyone who is willing to come by and visit with us and share their stories and to help me preserve the history of Ansteorra. It is precious to me, and I thank you very much, very sincerely. And I would welcome you to come back. We are here every Sunday. And if you just are bored and feel like talking, you have an audience.
Thank you,
it's good to see you.
Thank you for hosting this.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much.
And
Orm and Megan, it's really good to see you guys again.
Good to see you, Inman.
Yes.
And Robin.
It's good to see everybody. We don't actually, as you can see, I keep fading in and out. That's not euphemistic. That happens a lot.
I just figured you were one of the Fae, and you know the grip of this world on you is tenuous at best.
I was born
sliding underhill.
I was born on August 1st.
Llamas.
So yeah, there's rumors about that.
Orm has gone to where he's just doing art full time, and he sometimes paints 12 hours a day right now.
Oh wow.
And so forgive us if we are not more present to the process, but we hope to be. Our greatest hope is to be able to play as actively as we did at one time. Yeah. So, but when you consider that the first 20 years of our marriage were spent with, except for New Year's and Christmas, were spent mostly at SCA events, and most of those away from home. We have enjoyed some time off. We haven't been gone, but we have been enjoyed, seeing each other.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all again, and I will bid you good night and hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, Zabeta.